Do we know anything really about Jesus? Frankly, the answer is yes. Even secular historians say that we know an awful lot about this figure. The first thing to hold in mind is no one in the know doubts the existence of Jesus. Now, I know that some of the new atheists, relying on non-historians, question the existence of Jesus, but frankly, no serious classicist or New Testament historian in any university in the world has any doubts that Jesus really existed. The evidence is frankly overwhelming, not only just biblical sources, but non-Christian sources. There is a very clear reference to Jesus in Josephus. Now, some scholars think that the Josephus passage has been tampered. I tend to agree with them, but virtually all of us agree that there's a core of the Josephus passage, Josephus being a first century Jewish historian, that really is from Josephus. And he really does refer to Jesus as the claimed Messiah, as a teacher, as a wonder worker who was crucified under Pontius Pilate. Then we have Tacitus, the greatest of ancient Rome's historians, writing in the early 2nd century. He refers to Jesus as the founder of this terrible sect called the Christians. Again, it's wonderful passing evidence that this man really did live. I mean, there are plenty of other non-Christian references to Jesus, but they're two of the more famous ones. But the thing is, historians don't leave it there with these passing non-Christian references to Jesus. If you open any serious academic book on the life of Jesus, these non-Christian references might get 20 pages. The rest of the academic tome will be using the New Testament as the fundamental source for understanding Jesus. Now, New Testament experts don't treat the New Testament as the Word of God, as Christians believe it is, as I believe it is, but they do treat it as a serious historical source. It is no exaggeration to say that secular historians take the New Testament as the earliest, most plentiful, and most reliable source of information about the historical Jesus. And there are two reasons for this. Number one, it's incredibly early. In terms of ancient history, documents written within 20 years to about 50 years of Jesus is incredibly good. I mean, Tacitus wrote his account of Emperor Tiberius, the emperor who reigned when Jesus lived, 77 years after the emperor, but it's still our best source for knowing about Tiberius. All of the New Testament is written well within that 70-year period. Some of it is written within 20 years of Jesus. So its early date is greatly in its favour. The other thing is, these New Testament documents were not all penned by people who sort of got together and said, let's make sure we say the same thing. These documents are independent of each other. So the letters of Paul were written completely independently of, say, the Gospel of Mark. They didn't get together to make sure they were saying the same thing. So historians take this very seriously. They call this the criterion of multiple attestation, which basically just means if you hear the same news from multiple sources and you know they haven't got together to wind you up, you're more likely to believe it. Well, this criterion applies to the New Testament. And when you do all this historical work on the figure of Jesus, most historians agree that we know an awful lot about this man. We know he was a Galilean teacher. We know people in his day thought he was a miracle worker. We know a lot about what he actually taught. And ultimately, we know he was crucified under Pontius Pilate, and that within a very short space of time, people were claiming to have seen him alive from the dead and claiming him to be the Messiah. All of this historical data is firm. We know an awful lot about Jesus of Nazareth.